Welcome to the Equip Podcast. Here you'll find conversations from people of all different walks of life, sharing their experiences, the things the Lord has taught them, and things to equip you. Equip is based on Ephesians 4:11-13 that talks about equipping God's people for works of service so that the body of Christ may be built up. That is our goal here, to build you up and equip you through seasons of ups and downs in life. Welcome back to the Equip Podcast. We are in the Speak Life series, and I'm your host, Taylor Gibson. This series is based on Ephesians 4:29 that says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." So today we're talking about speaking life in marriage. We've got Hixon Frank, our executive pastor, and Margie Frank, his wife, who's an interior designer. They have 3 kids and 1 daughter-in-law and are here to share a little insight into their marriage. So welcome.
Thanks. I'm excited.
Well, let's start right in with the fun stuff. How did y'all meet and how long have you been married?
We met at FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I was 16, she was 15, and there she was. She walked in, and that was pretty much. Here's what I knew about Margie. She was Richard Baxter's little sister, which means nothing to anyone listening, but for me, it was like Richard Baxter. He was like big man on campus. He loved Jesus more than anybody I knew. And I thought, man, that's his little sister. And so, and there she was.
So it wasn't really about me. It was about my connection.
Well, it didn't hurt.
Wow.
Your brother didn't hurt. It didn't hurt. So maybe he had a little idolizing going on, but whatever. So there it was, FCA.
So
there she was.
We met in high school. I was thinking about this earlier. Like it's completely God that we're together, because at 15, there are a lot of things that I thought, I don't know what voice in my head was like, this is the way to hook him. But I remember, like, we had our first date when I was 15, and on my 16th birthday that spring, I had a 16th birthday party or whatever. So, game room full of, peers, friends, whatever. Hixon Frank is there. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is going to be the thing that gets him. Let's crank up the Michael Jackson, and I'm going to moonwalk for this guy. And I'm going to
And she did.
I'm like, what part of me thought this is the thing?
She nailed it. She did nail it.
Moonwalk.
Everything.
And in spite of that.
Yeah. Which later became the dances to Thriller.
Uh-huh.
The whole,
added on to it.
It
The
was
repertoire.
great. It was great.
So
I know.
funny. And then how long have y'all been married?
34 years.
Wow.
That's right.
I know. It's been fun.
Yep.
That is so cool. So what is something you feel like you do well in marriage?
Yeah. So it's hard. So here's the things we're not terrible at. How about that? Because it's hard to say we're just wonderful. We're great. I think there's probably, we're real intentional. And that came from Margie's side. Just tell the story about when.
Well, I can literally remember the entrance to Texas Tech. We both went to Tech. That we were driving back onto campus, and I had this conversation with you. I had 2 sets of grandparents. Well, duh. I mean, I guess we can have more than that, but both sets of grandparents, like, they made it 50 plus years in marriage, but they made it, but they kind of tolerated each other. They didn't enjoy each other. I don't know that they really liked it. It didn't seem like they liked each other. And so they survived, but they weren't thriving. And I knew from that what I didn't want. And so I remember having the conversation, if we're going to end up like that, I don't want to get married. And so from the very beginning, we were so young, but we were very intentional about where we were going, like what we wanted to end up with, and what we were going to build and put in place to get there. So there was a lot of intentionality and we set marriages before us that we wanted ours to be like, and asked them, what are you doing? How do you talk to each other? How do you, how do you
we irritated more couples just by saying, would you please tell us how to do this? Because we don't know.
Because so we were very intentional about, the way we were going to build it. So I feel like that set us off on a good, and we got it wrong. I think that's the things that we do well. We got it wrong, but we worked really hard not to repeat those mistakes, I think. Yeah. And because we're going to get it wrong. And I think sometimes when we're entering marriage, if you're at the beginning of it or dating or whatever, we do set up unhealthy patterns of how we interact. And I probably did a lot of that, like, oh, I'm going to withdraw and you need to chase me, and just unhealthy like communication
The
patterns.
movie theater things.
That is so true, by the way. And I didn't have any sisters growing up, so I didn't have a fat clue. Quick story, Margie's brother lived with us when he got out of the Army. He went to West Point, got out of the Army, he was getting some credits at Tech, and he lived with us. And there was something happened. I'm sure it was, whatever happened, it was my fault.
I don't remember what it was.
Margie left. She was quite upset, and she left. And so I just went back, kept watching the ball game or whatever I did.
Oh,
and
gosh.
Richard, her brother, looked at me like, "What are you doing?"
He goes, "Are you going to go
You're not-
after her?" And he goes, "She's good.
She'll
She's
be
fine."
fine.
And
She'll be
Richard
fine.
goes, "I think I'd go after her."
He was right.
This is why people need sisters.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
exactly,
right. That's
exactly.
exactly. So,
But I think so we had those unhealthy patterns, but we knew what we wanted it to look like. I wanted to get to this phase of no kids, empty nest, and
Still like each other.
enjoy each other, like have fun with each other and enjoy each other. But it's not that we don't have all the same, hardships and hard seasons and sufferings, but just to get on the other side of that. So I think we do friendship really well. I think we play together well. I think we laugh a lot at ourselves and each other in all the good ways. And we kind of keep things lighthearted even when they go heavy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, and so it was a pretty steep learning curve for me. Didn't have sisters, and so just learning that it's okay that really most of the attraction is that she's different than me in every way, and learning that, but not just learning it so I can find the key to get what I want from her, but appreciating the fact that Margie's loyal and she is a verbal processor. Well, hopefully I'm loyal, but I'm not a verbal processor. I need to sit and grind on something a while, and she has a lot of words. I don't have as many words. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It is okay that she processes that way. And all those things. So one of the verses that, years ago we kind of adopted and it really spoke to me, 1 Peter 3:7, likewise, husbands, live with your wife in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman. And I wasn't great at showing honor. I was great at winning arguments, and I was great at getting what I wanted, but I wasn't great at building her up. Another thing we adopted, I think, was after about 18 months, 2 years, I've created who my wife is. It doesn't mean that I mean that in the positive way. I'm the biggest influence in her life, certainly those first couple of years. And if I catch myself complaining about her, it's my fault. If she's not growing and thriving and developing and blossoming, so to speak, then really the only person I have to blame is myself. It doesn't mean she's not responsible for her life. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have hopes and dreams of her own. But if I've not fed those, it's really my fault. Early on, we had a group of friends we realized probably can't be a group of friends because my buddies weren't pushing me towards her. Her buddies weren't pushing her towards me. And so we really realized if we want to have a great marriage, we got to surround ourselves with people that are going to push us towards each other. And truthfully, those people are special when you find them.
Yeah.
And
I want to chase that real fast. You said you create the person that you marry in those first 2 years. So what encouragement is there to the couples who are past that 2-year mark going, I didn't do it well 2 years?
Oh, it's to me, it's never too late. It's never too late to create the person you want to. And again, I don't mean rob them of their will.
Not in a manipulative way.
No.
Right.
It's the words you speak into them. It's the words you speak over them. It's the encouragement. It's seeing those things in them that they don't see in themselves and pulling it out, the good things, So it's no harm, no foul, because how many restarts to our marriage have we had? A
Maybe
gazillion.
two, maybe.
There was 2 different
Quite
answers
a
there.
2,000, yes.
2,000. So it's never too late. It takes that humble posture, though. It takes humility and that humble posture of going, okay, I'm going to be the one that comes in like you have been better than I have over the years of just sometimes it's how you say it. And Hixon was so good. I can remember different stages of our marriage when you would come and say, I don't like the habit we've gotten into of how we talk to each other. I don't like this pattern that we've fallen into. That's a super disarming way to come at it and go, I don't want to talk to each other this way. So I think even things that I didn't see that God placed in me that you saw. And I think that's that unique, you're saying, well, we're past 2 years, but this was way into our marriage. And this is what creating the spouse that you're married to is. You're going to create a complainer, or you're going to create a joyful person, or you're going to create a lighthearted person. Hixon's the first to turn on the music, start the dance party in the kitchen, get it. You create that and do it your way. Y'all may not be dancers or whatever, but
we're not all moonwalkers.
Yeah, everyone cannot.
Wouldn't it be great if we were?
But it would be awesome.
It would be great.
I would be happy. But it's even Hixon really, really encouraged me and firmly kind of pushed me to teach women. And I never saw myself in that capacity. I didn't really see myself gifted in that way. And he kept saying, I see this in you. I think you connect with me. You just whatever it was, he kept affirming in me. And then it was okay, this fall, this is what I want you to speak on. And it was biblical sex, right out of the gate. Are you kidding me? That seems like a terrible idea.
It's a wonderful idea. Yeah,
let's
she
just
packed the room.
Go
by the way.
there. Well, hello. It wasn't for me.
It was
a subject, but just encouraging me, pushing me firmly, even when I was no. And then I remember and this speaks more to the value of the unique voice your spouse holds. Mm-hmm. His words have more weight than anyone in the physical world. Beside God's, his are the most. And so even as I clumsily started out of the gate one night, it was a Wednesday night, and I was there was an adjoining room, and I was would you just go and just, pop into that room next door, and listen in, eavesdrop in and give me pointers, tips, whatever. So he just kind of coached and encouraged this thing out of me that I didn't know I had inside of me or God had put inside of me. So that's kind of one aspect, but it is if you've, live with a complainer, maybe you've produced that, you've, spoken that. So we speak life and death. Our words have life and death. And
you said something, Margie, that for the longest time, I didn't realize the weight of my words. In my marriage, I didn't realize them, and so what made me, I didn't have a clue when I had wounded. I just thought we were talking, but I didn't realize the weight of my words, and so when I began to realize that, a lot of it made sense. How easily Margie is not easily wounded. My words, though, carry such weight that they can, and it's really the same thing with Margie as. If the room full of people is not impressed with me at all, and yet she is, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
You've even said that. So it does work both ways. And I think sometimes I did not realize that either. But that's the cool thing that God's given us with this covenant. I'm in covenant with him. Mm-hmm. So out of all the people in the world, we have this unique role and place in each other's lives. And I even think about a story that your twin brother tells all the time. And I actually texted him this morning to get the exact numbers, but Hixon had kind of just a health scare about 4 or 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we didn't realize it, but he was having his blood pressure was just going off the chart, and he was having migraines. And eventually after a year, we found out it was a tumor on his adrenal gland. And that was caught by an anesthesiologist because they were going in to do surgery on something else. It was crazy. But at the beginning, we didn't know what was happening. And he was in Wichita Falls caring for his mom, who was struggling with her health. And his brother called me. It was 10:30 at night. I was in Austin, and he was doing one of those phone conversations where it was "Hey, Margie, Hixon says do not get in the car and come. You don't need to come." And then he would turn away. He's but really, go ahead and get in the car and come. But he's don't. He was speaking for Hixon, and then he was but if you get in the car, it's really okay. And I was and I was oh, I'm getting in the car. And he was I'm at the hospital with Hixon. Everything's fine. But his blood pressure is really high, blah, blah, blah. And, and he kept turning away so text me when you get in the car. And, and I was like, oh, I'm coming. So anyway, I get there and
like 2 a.m. or something.
Oh, like 2:30 in the morning. Yeah. And James was there with you. And I actually texted him this morning, like, what were the numbers? And it was like, your numbers went as high as like into the 180s. But when I walked in, it was like 165, 170 up there. And I didn't notice it, but James stepped back and I just put my hand on Hixon's arm and just said, hey, babe, I'm here. We're good. I'm going to get teary. We're good. Everything's going to be fine. And James was like, oh my goodness, look at that. And he was like, I didn't catch it, but the number started coming down and it went down to 140 with the touch. That isn't Margie touching. That's only because I have a unique place in Hixon's life and he has a unique place in my life. So I think for those couples that are way past 2 years or into, 20, 30, 40, 50, just realizing that the power that we hold in our spouses and that God's giving us and entrusted us with, that's huge. And so what we do with it, that's what creates the spouse, Yeah. So that's kind of just a fun story, has nothing to do with me, but more shows that unique place that God has given us in our spouse's life, that just that touch, like it just dropped all the way down. So I think we just have to steward that with open hands. And I'm going to just kind of tag this on too. None of this works unless I'm first tucking myself under God's arm every day and receiving life-giving words and receiving grace from him. And when I receive grace and I get in the word and I ask him, fill me with the Spirit, help me walk in the Spirit, and I'm listening to the Spirit, like, using my words wisely with Hixon, then I can. But if I never start there, I don't have anything to give him. It's coming out of Margie and it's not pretty coming out of we've had those days and it's not good.
I told y'all she's good.
Oh, I love it.
I told you.
Well, this series that we're in is all about speaking life into different relationships. Now, you would think one of the easiest ones would be marriage, but for anyone that's married knows that's not true. So what are some of the ways that you speak life and encourage one another?
Yeah. So this would be where what I believe, and again, going back to the intentionality, was a defining moment in our marriage early on, and I was in student ministry, and understand the relative nature of this. We were in Houston, and I was kind of like the it girl in student ministry in Houston in the 90s, right? And I got to go speak other places, and I was just kind of sought after in my world. It was kind of a big deal, and I would give my best at work and leading my team, and when I went and preached and spoke and so forth, and I'd come home and I'd give Margie my leftovers, and I remember distinctly her saying, in a moment of clarity and frustration, that I was giving my best to everybody but her. And from the way I talk, I didn't have anything left to give, but I was great, polite, kind, clever, funny to everybody else, but I wasn't to her. And so we began this process of, we're going to treat each other as good or better than we treat anybody else. And so it sounds silly, but we started being polite to each other, And it's like a silly thing, but instead of, it was always a please, a miss you, and it didn't create formality, it created intimacy because of the value of the words. And it's hard to describe, but we all know couples that talk to each other kind of like a roommate or a brother or sister. And Margie is my sister in Christ. That can't be forgotten. But she's also my lover. She's the mother of my kids. She's all of those things.
Yeah. So I think we set ground rules, I think, from that day forward. So we had, that's a restart that was deep into marriage. And so it's like, his mercies are new every day. Like,
thank goodness.
Good night. If he didn't extend that to me, that's what allows me to stop and go, I want to redo. I want to do this over. But we set some ground rules, and not in a weird, like, here's the ground rules. But we did kind of talk about, no sarcasm. That's gone. That's dead, because sarcasm has a way of allowing me to get a zinger in. It does. And really you walk away and you're like, and then there's a wound in there that can't really get healed.
You can't address it because, I was kidding.
That's the thing. And he was like, no more just kidding. We just kind of set these to speak life into, it is hard because he's not going anywhere. And I think sometimes then that familiarity is like, well, they're not going anywhere, so I can just dump all. And here's the deal, just like Hixon's had that experience. I remember an experience like where we were, it might have been in conflict, I can't remember, but we were talking and I was just unloading the clip. And it's almost like you have that out of body and you start floating above looking down and like you're trying to stop yourself. You're like, this is like, and I saw the life draining out of Hixon as I'm just like, I'm unloading the cup. I'm like, this is the day.
She was crushing my
the
soul.
Whole cup.
That's right.
Crushing my soul.
I think it's a verbal processor thing.
It is.
Because I've done that
Trust
before
me.
too. And my husband's like, what is happening?
It's too much. And I remember thinking, stop, pull it back. You don't have to say everything that's in your head. And I just couldn't stop. And it was soul crushing. And Hixon was like, just because it's true doesn't mean you have to say it.
You don't
and
have
I
to
was
say
like,
At least not now. You can say it later.
Not all at one time.
Not everything has to be said. And so just for me to listen to the Spirit and not say, sometimes it's not saying, but we were going to be kind to each other. And really, even as we've aged, the longer you're together, there are so many couples that do that, like, oh, the ball and chain, or, oh yeah, she does this, or he does. And it's almost like this, like almost a sign of like, we've been married that long. And it's like, we don't want that, but we have to intentionally, instead of like, get the phone, like, hey, would you grab that phone? It's just that little shift in words, like, would you mind grabbing that? So it's not like a formality, like you said, but there's just kindness. There's no reason to not be kind. And I'm telling you, I was so excited about this subject when you texted, Taylor, because I really do. There are times when there is a bomb that just explodes in a family or a marriage that, you can't help. But most of our marriages could be saved or improved or better or rescued from the edge if we go all the way back to how do we speak to each other. I'm telling you, you want to fix your friendship, how do you speak together to each other? You want to fix your sex life with your spouse, how are you talking to each other? We have to do business partner. We got to pay bills and raise kids or whatever. How do you speak together? It affects everything in your marriage. And so that's speaking life. And it's as much, not as much what you say as how you say it.
Yeah.
And slowing down just tonight to be kind, tell the truth in love. There are times that it's like, this has to be said, but.
So the words matter. They matter. And we've all said words we wish we could get them back. Proverbs 18:21, the tongue has the power of life and death. I mean, if you let that sink in a little bit, the tongue has the power of life and death. And so every time you open your mouth, you're speaking in the extreme. You're speaking one of those two.
Yeah.
So you're speaking life, or you're speaking death. And maybe there's some words in the middle somewhere, but you got both extremes. And to intentionally consider the weight of your words, our words, is huge.
That's good. So how does this apply to disagreements, and how have you modeled that for your kids?
We've really never had a disagreement. So I have no idea.
Wow.
I don't
Next
know.
question.
Yeah, next question. What else you
I'm
got?
like, ooh, I've got like all these notes.
Oh, I got no notes. What does that say?
No. It's just like, I think how this translates over into when we have a disagreement, because we have disagreements. We're living with a sinner is living with a sinner. Like, it's going to happen. We're going to land in different places. We're going to get crossways. I think for me, when we're in those, speaking life is sometimes even the things that I say, prepping up to it, going into it, going, it's not okay, but we're going to be okay. Yeah. I've said that before, like, we're going to be okay, but this is not okay right now. And we're on two different planes. And even if you're able to verbalize, like, we're missing each other We're missing each other. You can feel it I can feel it in my marriage. We can feel it when we're missing each other, or when there's a flat out like, what did you just say? Like,
what did you say to me?
What did you say to me? We're watching a show right now and they're all lawyers and they're always like, what did you say to me? We feel like, so now we're turning around like, what did you just say to me? But it's like, it's not okay, but we're going to be okay. Just kind of laying that down, before you move forward. But
to me, there's a great principle too of sometimes speaking life into each other doesn't even happen when you're together in the room. There's zero doubt in my mind that when I'm not there and Margie's with her girlfriends, that she's lifting me up, that she is not tearing me down. And then when she meets a new person, it's not, there's no complaints about her husband, right? I mean, she has very close friends that she will talk to get a solution, but there's never that edgy, eye rolling, well, he's a guy, what an idiot. None of that ever. And as silly as it sounds, that speaks life. Just knowing that and that affirmation of when she leaves the room, I know that our issues are safe.
Yeah.
And that she'll get appropriate counsel, but I'm just not the target.
Well, and that just goes back to, we have a close, tight-knit support system of couples that we push each other back to each other's marriages and back to each other's spouses. And it's a group that we know everyone's flaws. I think you could name all of the wives and all of the husbands, and I could too, but it's like, but look what they do bring to the table. But Margie, when he shows up this way. And so knowing that we each have something that's valued that they bring to the table, and then we encourage them back to that. Because if you don't, that's so when we come to an argument, you kind of have that in your backdrop that I know he's not undermining me when I'm not around. But I think to speak life is to keep the focus on, you're attacking the problem. You're not attacking each other. And it's so easy for my eyes to come back up, because the lazy way is like, like I said, we both he knows all of my weak spots. I know all of his weak spots. I can take his legs out from under him. He could take my legs out from underneath me, choosing not to use that because that's lazy, but going, no, I'm going to keep my eyes down here on the problem. And the whole goal is like, you and I are going to attack this problem so we can get on the other side of it. That's the whole goal, is we're crossways. And that is one thing you do better than I do. You work to get uncrossways as quickly as we can. Now, sometimes that's not that whole, don't get a bit angry. I don't know. You can send me emails, because sometimes you have to just go to bed and sleep, and it's better. And I think sometimes you need I'm going to need a hot minute. I'm going to need and that's that. We're okay. We're going to be okay. But, I'm going to need a little bit of time to process. So just keeping your eyes on that, because that takes a humble posture too, to go, we're going to focus on the problem and not whose fault this was or who did what. That's way easier. But I think you speak life in the way that you approach it too, because you can come at it with a harsh beginning, like you never, like I heard what you said, or I've got an issue with this, or we've got this problem. That's a harsh entry. But speaking life is doing a soft entry of, I need your help on this. I don't understand what was meant here. Or can you help me figure this out? That's that soft entry where it's disarming. Yeah. The other, you kind of go loaded for bear. The other's just it's just more disarming. And then the spouse can say I think we have it's not a good time. There have been times you walked in the door and I'm like, I'm ready. We're figuring this out now.
Game on.
Nah,
postpone the
everything.
Game.
Everything's up for grabs, business right now. And he's like, I just came out of this meeting, or I just go, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is not a good time. So it's the timing too. It's knowing when, having the energy and kind of being in a good place. You're not tired. You're not worn out, where we can. Yeah. Keep it on the problem and not the person. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Man, that's good. So you mentioned outside stressors that kind of play a factor in that. How do you separate outside stress and not take it out on your spouse?
That's hard. I think that's a hard thing.
I don't know.
Still figuring that one out.
The answer to that question.
That's so hard, because so many times. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, I do think truthfully, when I come home, for example, and it's been a particularly tough time, I think Margie's sensitivity to that is really, I'm not the one who makes sure it's okay. She's the one who, and I think too, when I see her racing around and you got a client who's upset about whatever, I'm like, okay, let's figure out how to do it. So in some ways, the person who has had the stress, really their spouse, if they recognize it, can play a huge part in them not bringing it in.
Yeah.
Them creating a space where, hey, you know what? I don't mean she gets my pipe and slippers and my newspaper. I mean, but she does create just a stable, healthy, hey, look, that's out there, that's not in here environment. You know?
Well, and giving that person what they need for it not to come in and be an issue. And like you're saying, like whatever, you might need to kind of chill out in front of a football game or go hit a bucket of balls at the golf course or the batting cage or whatever, and knowing like, okay, she's going to need to sit with me or she's going to need to be alone, like reading it and keeping that. But some things, it is, to me, this has been probably my biggest struggle. We were laughing, and sometimes in the middle of like raising kids, we're like, we'd be awesome if we didn't have all these kids. We're like, we'd be awesome if we could pay all the bills.
For the record, we love our children.
We do.
Generally.
Generally.
Yeah.
No.
We do. Like, and it was worth every stressful season to get where we are now. Like, this is the fun stuff. But when you health was probably one of the hardest things. And the stress of kids, or even their disappointments or their struggles or finances, like if we weren't struggling like financially or something, like all of those. And sometimes you turn on each other. And I think I distinctly remember this point in time too, of stopping and saying, we're not going to, it's a choice. We're not going to turn on each other. We're going to choose to go back to back, and we're going to link arms this way. Like we're going to twist our arms together, but we're going to be back to back, and it's going to be us against the world. And then when you weather that, it's like a superpower. It's like, oh, we can do anything now, because we weathered the storm together or whatever. So I think that's how you keep those. Well, you're not going to keep them out. They're going to come in, but it's that choice to go, we're not going to turn each other. We're going to go back to, sometimes you're arm in arm, sun's on your face, wind at your back. But, a lot of time, I want to say most of it, a lot of times you've got these outside stressors that are weighing in. And so it's reading, what does that person need? Because I can kind of help diffuse that when they come in I'm not saying all my words, which I want to do.
You have great words.
Or I want to go over the stressor, and it's like we don't need to acknowledge or whatever.
And
so
go
ahead.
Go ahead. No,
go ahead.
There are times too. Sometimes you have a whole season that's stressful.
Yeah.
And you have to sit in it, and you have to sit in it in a healthy way, where yes, it's heavy, yes, it's difficult, but we're together, and it's good. And like you said, not turning on one another, but there's been seasons, months and months long, where it's just tough. Yeah. It's just hard. And what I think the goal is, and to whatever extent we've been successful with this, is Margie cuts my stress in half rather than doubles it. And it sounds very poetic, I'm sure. I may write a poem about it. You don't know. I could write a poem.
We don't know.
But I could do that. And she doesn't add to it. And hopefully it's the same with the stuff she's going through. I'm offering solutions, but not trying to fix. We all know how that can go. Listening and sitting in it, and then,
but
those
you're
kinds
right.
of things.
There are seasons that are out of your control that you have to sit in it. You have to sit in those hard seasons together, and even letting the other person know, like, I've kind of hit my wall. Like, so knowing or even just even when you have an adult kid that's walking through adult things that are hard seasons, and you're kind of carrying it too. And then we had a friend with a really hard diagnosis, and we were just normal, joking and having fun in the car. And all of a sudden, I'm tender, and I'm like, I just can't joke today. I'm just tender, just letting them know those outside forces are starting to come in, instead of going snapping, just giving him a heads up, like, I'm tender. And I named the kid and the friend, I'm just tender, and it's those forces are coming in on me. But you're right. There's seasons that we've had to just sit in the hard, but this is what, Hixon, you're good at. And and I think is a secret sauce, is coming up for air and laughing about it.
Yeah.
In the middle of it, in the middle of this hard diagnosis, we had one of the most funny, like laughing at things and with our friends and coming up for air and making fun of the insanely crazy hard stuff that we're in the middle of.
You laugh or you cry.
Yeah, you laugh.
I'd rather laugh.
You gotta do one or the other.
Yeah, you gotta pick one. Okay, I feel like I could just sit and listen to all of this. I feel like I'm soaking it
For the
all
record,
in.
I'm out of words.
Oh.
Yeah, I've used my words.
That's the end. They're all done. He won't
Well,
be
the
speaking.
good thing is we only have 2 more questions,
Oh, good.
and they are our standard podcast questions that we ask every time. What is something you're learning, and what is something you're loving?
I'm learning to be quiet, but in this sense, to be still and to calm my soul and allow God to calm my soul.
That's good.
You're up.
Well, I'm learning. I'm a friend, Leanne Kirkendall, gave me this book like a year ago, and I just started reading it and sent it to Grayson, and he's reading it too. And it's the bait of Satan, and it's just how the enemy uses offense to pull me out of God's will and put gulfs between me and people. And he's got this great quote that just kind of sat with me: a believer who chooses to delight himself in God's word in the midst of adversity will avoid being offended. That person will be like a tree whose roots search deep to where the Spirit provides strength and nourishment. He will draw from the well of God deep within his spirit. This will mature him to the point where adversity will now be a catalyst for fruit. And that's been the desire, like, Lord, because we all have adversity and we all have offenses. Luke 17:1, it is impossible that no offense should come. Offense is going to come. He says that.
That's right.
But it's just, what are we going to do with that? And I'm like, so he's really, in a very uncomfortable way, I can read about one chapter and I have to step away for about a week because he's really, really dealing with me in this area. And I just want to come like that. But what I'm loving is I got the new Alexa that's like the big screen.
Okay, truth talking now.
And it's like you undermount it under your kitchen cabinets. And I'm completely loving, which is not super new. I think it came out in June, the new Elevation Maverick City combo worship. And they have Dante Brown on it, which, no, not Dante Brown. Dante Bowe? What am I trying to say?
Dante's Peak.
I'm going to get the name wrong. I'm going to get the name wrong. Dante
Whichever
Bowe.
one.
Anyway.
Dante something.
Dante.
He's amazing, and he's been around
And
a
the
while,
fellas,
but
yeah.
I'm loving putting that new album on YouTube on and having it going and just have it, as
right.
I'm working, either, doing housework or doing my work or whatever. But he's got a great song. It's More Than Able. And I just love having that playing. The words are, when did I start to forget all of the great things you did? When did I throw away faith for the impossible? But the chorus is like, you're more than able. Who am I to deny what the Lord can do? So if you're listening in and you're like, we're way deep into this and it's not going well, who am I to deny what the Lord can do? So I'm loving my Alexa and Dante. I'll find his name out for you.
That's pretty much what my answer is too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
almost the exact same thing. Actually, in all honesty, I love the season of life we're in. I love having grown kids. I loved having young kids. But I love the partnership that we can have now, a little bit more freedom to minister, to serve. I like the challenge that is a growing church, figuring it out, making up for missteps and forging ahead. It's a good season. It's a good season.
It is.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you both for being here and
Thanks for
giving us a
having
little insight into your marriage.
Thank you.
you.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Equip Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when a new episode drops. And follow us on social media to stay connected. We're at GABC_women. See you next time.